Welcome to Climate Quickies, bite-sized nuggets of climate goodness from our TEDxLondon experts in under 5 minutes.
In this week's Climate Quickie, we hear from Andres Jimenez, the Executive Director of Green 2.0, an environmental diversity watchdog. Andres has got some pretty juicy findings to share from their latest diversity report card, with details on how diversity, equity, and inclusion is progressing inside the big environmental NGOs and foundations driving much of climate action we see today. Let's head over to Andres to hear what he's discovered. And remember, stay curious.
Hi, my name is Andres Jimenez. I am the Executive Director of Green 2.0. Green 2.0 is the only organization of its kind in the United States that does what we do. And what is that? So what we do is we are here to diversify the environmental sector. We do this through many different ways. We work with Congress, the administration, we work with foundations, as well as environmental NGOs. I always say it's not enough to have a seat at the table, but communities of colors and leaders of color need to have a voice. Environmental organizations, nonprofits, are there to work on advocacy, they are there to work on policy, and they are there to make sure that legislation and efforts around environmental issues happen both at the local, state, and federal level. Foundations play a role in that they give money to environmental organizations, small, medium, and large, to do the work that they do. It is critical that foundations fund nonprofit groups that are prioritizing diversity because for too long, historically, the same people have had the voice in the environmental sector. And what we haven't heard from for too long are those voices that are impacted in communities most affected by climate change. Communities of color, as we all know, are impacted the most. We need to make sure that we are listening to these communities, their concerns, and how environmental catastrophes and climate change are impacting their daily lives, their families, and their communities. At Green 2.0, we have been working on several issues to make sure that we are providing resources for the environmental community. One of the resources that Green 2.0 provides is our annual report card. During our most recent report card, we looked at 68 environmental NGOs and 20 foundations which shared their racial and ethnic diversity of their full-time staff, senior staff, head of organizations, and boards. One of the most interesting things that we found in this year's report card is that, yes, throughout environmental NGOs, there is an increase when it comes to diversifying staff. The problem that we're seeing is as you move up that ladder, that percentage of staff of color decreases to the point where as you get to that leadership role, those decision makers, those that are defining the mission and focus of organizations, in many places, when it comes to diversity at that level, is zero. And that is something that is appalling. It needs to change. And so we are excited to see growth in diversity within staff of organizations. But what we need to see and what we need to accelerate as an environmental sector is leadership of color. Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, Middle East or North Africans, and Alaska Natives are missing entirely from executive leadership across foundations. So one of the things that I'm most proud about when it comes to Green 2.0 is our fellowship program. When I was a young intern here in DC, I wasn't paid. And so that meant that I had to pay both with transportation and I had to pay for myself to get to the internship. I had to make sure that I had food for lunch, and that all came out of my pocket. And at the end of every month, I remember having to walk behind the person in front of me in the metro because I didn't have enough money at the end of the month because I wasn't paid. And I remember thinking, whenever I get a chance in my career to make sure that I am not only giving an opportunity to young people of color, but making sure that they're paid for their time, I'm going to do that. And so years ago, I worked on putting together the first internship program that was paid when I worked at Ocean Conservancy, and then did it again when I was at Citizens Climate Lobby. It was on my high to-do priority list when I got to Green 2.0 to make sure that this program continued. I think it's crucial to make sure that fellows and interns walk away with the knowledge and with the tools that they need for their career. The environmental sector is growing when it comes to jobs. So whether it's scientists, staff assistants, vice presidents, CEOs, those jobs are all growing. Nonprofits are growing. There's a new nonprofit, coming out almost, weekly, and that's fantastic. The environmental sector is exploding with potential. And I think the word potential is key. Now, what we need to do is we need to harness not only those who are currently within the environmental sector, but we need to make sure that we're bringing in new ideas, new voices, communities of color, young, passionate individuals to fill these roles, to give them a place, to change the culture and make sure that we're moving forward when it comes to environmental issues in the positive and right way. I am very hopeful about the future. I'm very hopeful about the idea that the environmental sector can and will diversify. Are we doing it quick enough? No. But am I hopeful? Yes.
Thanks for listening to this Quickie.
This episode was created by our superstar podcast team at TEDxLondon. Until next time,
stay curious.